Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade to aluminum outlets on your N54 powered BMW. Let's take a look at the outlets. So you have two pipes with the kit. Comes with new clamps, a coupler, and the O-rings that go on the end of the outlets. So if you followed my channel for a while, you'll know that I've already upgraded my outlets, but I went with silicone outlets, which are no longer popular or recommended because they can melt. And mine are starting to let go, and I want to get to them before they completely fail. There's a lot of debate regarding whether outlets are a worthy upgrade. I would say only if you have upgraded turbos, as I do on my car. So I went with the VTT outlets because they're 1.5 inch, about the same diameter as stock, believe it or not, but with no bottlenecks. And they have a larger opening. So normally you're limited to about 520 wheel horsepower with these outlets due to the size of this. So the 1 inch opening, as well as these pinches here, and where it merges into about a 1 inch size, are your factory bottlenecks. And they become an issue at around 520 wheel horsepower. The silicone outlets are very large, but they can melt. I've never used this company before, but I like the black color, and I just like the fact that they're designed to maintain air velocity with no bottlenecks. I just wanted to insert a quick FYI and let you know that the outlets that I installed actually flow about 60% more than stock from what I've looked up. And that's why 1.5 inches is plenty for this car, because you maintain air velocity that way. Because you'll get to your torque a little bit sooner if you can have higher airspeed through a smaller pipe, but you don't want to go too crazy. So my car is probably making 550 to 580 wheel horsepower, and these would easily support that. If I were to go to larger 2 inch outlets, I'd have a little bit less air velocity and probably see no gains. They could actually spool a little bit later. So that's why I opted for this. I think it's a good solution for you guys that have upgraded turbos. Because anybody that's trying to push more than 700 wheel doesn't go with twins anyway, they go with a single. So I've already covered this DIY when I upgraded to silicone outlets, but I'll show you what happens to them, as well as show you what's involved to transition to aluminum outlets. The DIY now will be similar if you have your factory outlets. I know from my previous DIY that we should be removing the engine cover, the snorkel, and the fan shroud, as well as the vacuum canisters and coolant bottle. I'll recommend that you check out my original DIY for some more nuance regarding removing some of these parts. I'm just gonna get past getting them out of the way for now. I'm removing the upper T30 Torx bolt for the fan shroud. I removed the lower T30 bolt that holds the trans cooler to the fan shroud. Now I'm popping off the charge pipe from the fan shroud. Now I'll take out the vacuum canisters. There's two 10mm nuts at the bottom. Two 10mm for the coolant bottle. Disconnect the electrical connector for the coolant level sensor. That'll allow you to move the coolant bottle right out of the way. And that's why I'm replacing this. As you can see, try as I might, it's basically touching the manifold. As you can see, it was still making a seal from here, but this is just a mess. Times have changed. These are no longer the way to go, but they were the only option at one point. Removing the V-band at the front of the outlet. Removing the clamp for the rear part of the outlet. I'm using this tool to get to the rear outlet clamp. I didn't make sure that it was oriented in the right position when I was installing my turbos, so it's a little hard to get to right now. Grabbing the new pipe, inserting the O-ring. Getting that O-ring in was a little tough, but got it done. By the way, there's a look inside the pipe. At the welds, etc. Not bad. So this is the piece that leads down to the intercooler. I had to cut it short when I installed my silicone outlets, and I had to extend it back out. You probably wouldn't have to do that if you're just going straight to aluminum outlets. Just keep that in mind if you're running an aftermarket intercooler. I'm going to put this piece on the car first, and then we're going to attach the other outlet so we can hold everything in place. Make sure your O-ring is still seated on there properly. So you know, if you get this started with about one turn, you'll be able to click it onto the turbo and then fish the pipe in there and just expand it enough to get it to lock into place. Otherwise, it's very difficult to try to get this started after the fact. So you won't be able to have that clicked in. That won't be enough room for you. You have to have about one thread on there. Get it situated over the turbo, tuck the tube into there, and then start threading it in. Otherwise, it's very tricky. So I've rotated this pipe as far as it'll go this way. I want to rotate this as much as I can going that way to keep distance from the manifold. So FYI, I removed the boost solenoid to be able to have some room to shove my arm in there. If you look up the instructions for these aftermarket aluminum outlets, it calls for you to take your downpipes out and whatnot to be able to insert that lower clamp on, but I avoided it. I shoved rags underneath the pipe to get in the exact position to where it needed to be. I got the V-band on, and then I went underneath the car and just kind of guided the clamp into place with my hand. I was able to just shove my hand on the side of the downpipe. It was a tight squeeze. And then I came from above on a stool, and my finger started that bolt to the point where it was started enough that the pipe couldn't come loose anymore. And then I lowered the car, and I'm doing a final tightening on that V-band clamp. So you can avoid dropping downpipes and all that extra labor, but you'll mess around for this for probably an hour to be able to get it going. Just keep that in mind, but it's better than pulling the downpipes out. And I had that coupler disconnected when I was doing that work because the angle I needed for the pipe to mate perfectly to the turbo flush was not the same angle as it is when it's in that coupler. This heat blanket here didn't come with it, but I had it, so I just stuck it on the one side of this just to ensure that I don't have any issues. Now I'll do a final tightening on that V-band clamp. All right guys, that's the gist of the install. It's very tough to get that rear clamp on, but you can do it without dropping your downpipe. Like I said, you have to get a very specific angle on that V-band clamp for the bolt to be able to clear. So I'd recommend you get one of these. That's a Husky 1/4 inch small hand tool. That gives you the room to get in there and tighten that bolt down. That'll avoid you dropping your downpipe, and it is possible. Since I have the experience of installing the silicone outlets, I can tell you this is a lot harder because you don't have any wiggle room really with those flanges. You have to get everything within like a millimeter of where they got to end up to be able to tighten down that V-band clamp. So it is a lot harder. It'll take you a few hours, even though it seems so simple, to get this job done. Keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and start reassembly. Alright guys, that'll conclude this video showing you how to install aluminum outlets on your N54. It's a recent upgrade over the last couple of years. I wouldn't recommend you put outlets on your car unless you're going for more than 500 wheel horsepower, and probably only if you have upgraded turbos, because it's a bit of a pain to do. But if you already have that scenario, I recommend the aluminum ones. If this is the first video you're catching on mine, please consider subscribing. I do upload regularly. Thanks for watching.